The woman appeared on the horizon like a mirage, dust rising from her boots as she walked the final 100 yards toward Ethan Xavier's ranch in the summer heat of 1878. And he knew before she even reached his fence that his solitary life in the Arizona Territory was about to change forever. Ethan set down the leather reins he had been mending and stood from the porch of his weathered cabin, shading his eyes against the late afternoon sun. The figure approaching was clearly struggling, her gait uneven, one hand pressed to her side. He could see now she was young, perhaps in her early 20s, with dark hair falling in tangled waves past her shoulders and a dress that had once been fine but was now torn and stained with travel. She reached his property line and stopped, swaying slightly as she gripped the fence post. When she lifted her face, he could see the desperation there, the cracked lips and sunburned cheeks. "Water," she managed, her voice hoarse and barely audible across the distance. "Please, I need water." Ethan was moving before he consciously decided to, his long legs carrying him swiftly across the dusty yard. He had been alone on this patch of land for 3 years now, ever since he had scraped together enough money to claim it and build his small operation. Visitors were rare, and a woman traveling alone in this territory was almost unheard of. "Easy now," he said as he reached her, catching her elbow as she began to tip forward. Up close, he could see she was younger than he had first thought, maybe 21 or 22 to his 26 years. Her eyes were a striking green, even dulled as they were with exhaustion. "I have got you." He guided her through the gate and toward the well, supporting most of her weight. She was slight beneath the layers of her ruined traveling dress, and he could feel her trembling. When they reached the well, he made her sit on the stone edge while he worked the pump handle. "Slow," he cautioned as he handed her the dipper full of cool water. "Drink slow or you will be sick." She nodded, pressing the metal to her lips with shaking hands. He watched her throat work as she swallowed, saw the way her eyes closed with relief. When she had drained the dipper, she held it out for more, and he refilled it without question. "Thank you," she whispered after the second helping. Some color had returned to her cheeks, though she still looked as though a strong wind might blow her over. "I did not think I would make it to anywhere before nightfall." "How long have you been walking?" Ethan asked, crouching down so he was at eye level with her. Now that the immediate crisis was passing, he was becoming aware of other details. Her accent marked her as educated, possibly from back east. The quality of her dress, despite its current state, suggested money or at least a comfortable background. "Since yesterday morning," she said, and then corrected herself. "No, the morning before that. I lose track. My stage was attacked 2 days ago, maybe 3 miles from the town of Jackson. Everyone scattered. I ran into the desert and kept running until I could not hear the gunfire anymore. When I tried to find my way back, I got turned around." Jackson was the nearest town to his ranch, about 8 miles northeast. If she had been wandering for 2 days, it was a miracle she had made it this far. "Was anyone hurt?" he asked. Her face crumpled slightly, and she looked away. "I do not know. I just ran. The driver told us to run if anything happened, that they wanted the strongbox, not us. But I heard shooting and screaming, and I just kept running." Ethan stood and offered her his hand. "Come inside. You need food and rest, and then we will figure out what comes next." She looked up at him, and he saw wariness flicker across her features. A woman alone, accepting the help of a strange man in the middle of nowhere. She had to be weighing her options, limited as they were. "My name is Ethan Xavier," he said, understanding her hesitation. "I run cattle on this land, such as it is. I give you my word that you are safe here. You can rest tonight, and in the morning I will take you into Jackson myself." The woman studied his face for a long moment, and he wondered what she saw there. He had been told he had an honest face, though in his experience that could mean anything. Finally, she placed her small hand in his calloused palm and let him help her to her feet. "Lily Garrison," she said, "and I am grateful for your kindness, Mr. Xavier." Inside the cabin, Ethan felt suddenly self-conscious about the state of his home. It was clean enough by bachelor standards, but basic. One room served as kitchen, dining area, and sitting room, with a smaller bedroom partitioned off at the back. He had built most of the furniture himself, rough but functional pieces that suited his solitary needs. "Sit," he said, gesturing to one of the chairs at his small table. "I will get something together for you to eat." Lily sank into the chair with a sigh, and he noticed how she favored her right side. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She touched her ribs through the fabric of her dress. "I fell yesterday, or maybe it was this morning. Everything runs together. I do not think anything is broken, just bruised." Ethan busied himself at the stove, stoking the fire and putting together a simple meal of beans and cornbread from what he had prepared that morning. It was plain fare, but it was hot and filling. As he worked, he was acutely aware of her presence in his space, the first woman who had crossed his threshold since he had claimed this land. "You are far from anywhere out here," Lily said, her voice stronger now that she had had water. "Do you not get lonely?" "Sometimes," Ethan admitted, spooning beans onto a tin plate. "But I like the quiet. I grew up in a crowded house in Kansas, 9 children in 3 rooms. When I came out here, the space felt like a luxury." He set the plate before her along with the cornbread and a fork. She looked at the food as though it were a feast, and when she took her first bite, she closed her eyes with pleasure. "This is wonderful," she said. "It is just beans." "It is the best thing I have ever eaten," she insisted, and he found himself smiling despite himself. While she ate, Ethan prepared more water for her, heating some on the stove so she could wash when she was ready. He found his cleanest spare shirt and a pair of trousers that would be too large for her but better than the rags she was wearing. "I do not have anything proper for a lady," he said, setting the clothes on the edge of the table. "But these are clean, and they will be more comfortable than what you have on." Lily looked up at him, and something in her expression made his chest tighten. Gratitude, yes, but also a kind of wondering surprise, as though she had not expected such consideration. "You are very kind," she said softly. "Anyone would do the same." "No," she said, shaking her head. "Not everyone, not by half." After she had eaten, Ethan excused himself to tend to his horses, giving her privacy to wash and change. Outside, the sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber. He went through the familiar motions of feeding and watering his 3 horses, but his mind was elsewhere. Lily Garrison. Even her name sounded like it belonged to a different world than his. She spoke with the polish of education, and carried herself with a natural grace that poverty and hard labor had long since beaten out of most folks he knew. What had brought her out to the Arizona territory? Where had she been going when the stage was attacked? When he returned to the cabin, she was sitting at the table again, swimming in his shirt and with the trousers rolled up at the ankles. She had washed her face and hands and attempted to comb through her tangled hair with her fingers. Even dressed in his cast-offs and exhausted from her ordeal, there was something striking about her. "The bedroom is yours for the night," Ethan said. "I will sleep out here." "I cannot take your bed," Lily protested. "You can and you will. It is not up for discussion." She opened her mouth as though to argue further, then seemed to think better of it. "You are a stubborn man, Mr. Xavier, so I have been told, and you can call me Ethan." "Then you must call me Lily," he nodded, feeling strangely pleased by this small intimacy. "Lily it is." As the evening deepened into night, They sat at the table and talked. Lily told him she had been traveling from St. Louis, where she had lived with her aunt after her parents died 5 years earlier. She was coming to the Arizona Territory to work as a teacher in Prescott, a position she had secured through correspondence. "I have always wanted to teach," she said, her face animated despite her exhaustion. "My father was a schoolmaster, and I grew up surrounded by books and learning. After he and my mother passed from fever, my aunt took me in, but she made it clear I was an obligation, not family. When I saw the advertisement for teachers out west, it felt like a door opening." "That is a long way to come alone," Ethan observed. "I had no reason to stay," she said simply. "And every reason to start fresh, somewhere new." Ethan understood that sentiment more than she might realize. He told her about his own journey west, how he had worked odd jobs for years to save enough money to claim land and start his own small ranch. His family had not understood why he wanted to leave Kansas, why he would choose solitude over the security of working the family farm with his brothers. "But I needed something that was mine," he explained, surprised at how easily the words came. He was not usually one to share such things. "Something I built with my own hands, success or failure on my own terms." "I think I understand that," Lily said, meeting his eyes across the table. "The wanting to prove you can stand on your own." They talked until Lily could barely keep her eyes open, her words beginning to slur with exhaustion. Ethan finally insisted she go to bed, and she was too tired to argue. She disappeared into his small bedroom, and he heard the creak of the rope bed as she lay down. He made himself a pallet on the floor with spare blankets and lay staring up at the dark ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of another person in his home. The soft, even breathing from the other room. The small movements as she shifted in her sleep. It took him a long time to drift off, and when he finally did, his dreams were troubled and strange. Morning came too quickly. Ethan woke to find pale sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee in the air. He sat up, momentarily disoriented, and saw Lily at his stove, working with the same coffee pot he had used the day before. "I hope you do not mind," she said, glancing over at him. "I woke early and thought I would make myself useful." "I do not mind at all," Ethan said, getting to his feet and folding his blankets. In the morning light, he could see that she looked much better than she had the day before. The rest and food had restored some of her strength, though bruises were darkening on her arms where he had not noticed them in the evening dimness. They shared a simple breakfast of coffee and more cornbread, with some jam Ethan had traded for in town the month before. The morning felt oddly domestic, comfortable in a way that surprised him. He had grown so accustomed to solitude that he had forgotten what it was like to share space with another person, to have quiet conversation over a meal. "I should get you to Jackson," Ethan said, though he found himself strangely reluctant. "The sheriff will need to know about the stage attack, and you will need to figure out what comes next." Lily nodded, but he noticed a flicker of something in her expression. Worry, fear. "Yes, of course. I have already imposed on your hospitality far too long." "It is no imposition," he said quickly. "I just meant that you will want to contact the stage company, maybe send word to Prescott about what happened." "Yes," she said again, but without much conviction. They prepared for the journey to Jackson, and Ethan saddled his most gentle mare for Lily to ride while he took his larger gelding. She admitted she had ridden before, though it had been some years, and he adjusted the stirrups to accommodate her shorter legs. The ride to Jackson took most of the morning, following the rough trail that served as the main route between the scattered ranches and the town. Ethan found himself watching Lily as they rode, noting the way she sat the horse with increasing confidence, the way she looked out across the desert landscape with interest rather than fear. "It is beautiful here," she said at one point, gesturing to the vast open spaces, the distant mountains purple against the blue sky. "So different from St. Louis. Everything there was pressed together, buildings and people and noise. Here you can see forever." "It grows on you," Ethan agreed. "Though it can be harsh, especially in summer and especially if you are not prepared for it. Like being stranded in the desert after a stage attack," Lily said with a wry smile. "Like that, yes." Jackson was a typical frontier town. A single main street lined with false-fronted buildings that gave the impression of being larger and more substantial than they actually were. There was a general store, a saloon, a church, a boarding house and the sheriff's office, along with a scattering of other businesses and homes spreading out from the center. Ethan led them directly to the sheriff's office, where Sheriff Tom Bartlett greeted them with surprise and concern. Bartlett was a solid man in his 50s, graying and weather-beaten but with sharp eyes that missed little. "Ethan Xavier," he said, rising from behind his desk. "It has been a while. What brings you to town?" "This is Lily Garrison," Ethan said, dismounting and moving to help Lily down from her horse. "Her stage was attacked a few days ago, about 3 miles out of town. She has been lost in the desert since then." The sheriff's expression turned grave. "The stage from St. Louis." "We found the wreckage 2 days ago, sent out a search party when it did not arrive on schedule. There was blood, signs of a struggle, but no bodies. We feared the worst." "I ran when the shooting started," Lily said, her voice steady despite the pallor that had crept into her face. "The driver told us to scatter if we were attacked. I do not know what happened to the others." "Come inside, both of you," Bartlett said, ushering them into his office. "Miss Garrison, we need to get your full account of what happened. And then we need to figure out what to do about getting you to Prescott safely." The next hours passed in a blur of questions and answers. Lily recounted everything she could remember about the attack, though it was clear her memories were fragmented by fear and exhaustion. She described 3 men on horseback, masked bandanas covering their faces, firing guns and shouting demands. The driver had whipped the horses into a run, and then everything had dissolved into chaos. "The other passengers," Bartlett said gently. "Can you describe them?" Lily thought for a moment. "There was an older gentleman, a merchant I think, and a younger man, maybe a prospector, and a woman with a small child. When the driver shouted for us to run, we all scattered in different directions. I heard gunfire behind me, but I did not look back. I just ran. We found tracks leading away from the coach in multiple directions," the sheriff said. "But we have not located anyone else yet, though it has been 3 days now." The implication hung heavy in the air. 3 days in the desert without water or shelter. The chances of survival dropped dramatically with each passing hour. "I will organize another search," Bartlett said. "Though I will be honest with you, Miss Garrison, the odds are not favorable." Lily nodded, her face pale but composed. Ethan, watching her, felt a surge of admiration for her strength. She had been through a terrifying ordeal, and yet she held herself together with a dignity that impressed him. "Now, about getting you to Prescott," the sheriff continued. "The next stage through will not be for another week, and I would not feel comfortable putting you on it even then, not until we have caught the men responsible for this attack. Do you have funds to stay at the boarding house while we sort this out?" Lily's expression finally crumbled. "Everything I had was on that stage. My trunk, my papers, my money. All I have left is what I am wearing, and even that belongs to Mr. Xavier." "She can stay with me," Ethan heard himself say, and both Lily and the sheriff turned to look at him with surprise. "I mean, at my ranch. Until this is settled, it is not proper accommodation for a lady, but it is safe and it is free." "Ethan, I cannot ask that of you," Lily said, her green eyes wide. "You are not asking, I am offering." He looked at the sheriff. "Unless you think it is a bad idea." Bartlett stroked his beard, considering. "It would solve the immediate problem. And I know you are a man of your word, Ethan, but Miss Garrison, you would need to be comfortable with the arrangement. You do not know this man." "He saved my life," Lily said quietly, looking at Ethan. "I trust him." Those simple words, spoken with such certainty, did something strange to Ethan's heart. He found himself holding her gaze, seeing something in her eyes that made the rest of the room seem to fade away. "Well then," the sheriff said, breaking the moment, "that is settled. Miss Garrison, you are welcome to stay here in town if you prefer, and we will work something out. But if you are willing to stay at the Xavier Ranch, that would certainly be the simpler solution." "I will stay with Ethan," Lily said, and he noticed she used his given name naturally, as though they had known each other longer than a single day and night. They left the sheriff's office with an agreement that Bartlett would send word if he learned anything about the other passengers or the attackers. Ethan took Lily to the general store, where he used credit he had built up to purchase a few basic items of clothing for her, practical pieces that would suit life on a ranch better than the ruined traveling dress she had arrived in. The store owner, a curious woman named Martha Collins, eyed Lily with unconcealed interest. "So you are the poor dear from the stage attack. What a dreadful experience. And you are staying out at the Xavier Ranch, for the time being," Lily confirmed, her tone polite but reserved. "Well, is that not fortunate that Ethan found you?" Martha continued, and Ethan could practically see the gossip forming in the woman's mind. By evening, the whole town would be buzzing with speculation about the pretty stranger staying with the bachelor rancher. They collected their purchases and stopped at the boarding house, where the owner, a widow named Sarah Green, offered Lily a sympathetic ear and a basket of food to take back to the ranch. "You poor thing," Sarah clucked, shaking her head. "What you must have been through. And do not you worry about what people might say about you staying out there with Ethan. He is a good man, one of the best. If he says you are safe, then you are safe." Lily thanked her warmly, and Ethan felt grateful for Sarah's endorsement. He knew how quickly rumors could spread in a small town, and he did not want Lily's reputation damaged by circumstances beyond her control. The ride back to the ranch was quieter than the morning journey had been. Ethan could tell that recounting the attack had taken a toll on Lily, bringing back memories she would probably rather forget. She sat her horse well, but with less attention to the landscape around them, her gaze distant. "Are you all right?" he asked when they were about halfway home. She looked over at him, seeming to come back from wherever her thoughts had taken her. "Yes, no, I do not know. I keep thinking about those other passengers, the woman with the child, if they are out there somewhere scared and hurt." Her voice broke slightly, "or worse." "The sheriff will do everything he can," Ethan said, though he knew the words were small comfort. "And you cannot blame yourself for surviving. You did what the driver told you to do, I know. But knowing it in my head and feeling it in my heart are different things." They rode on in silence for a while, and then Lily spoke again. "Why did you offer to let me stay? You do not know me. For all you know, I could be trouble." Ethan considered the question. Why had he offered? The practical answer was that it was the right thing to do, the decent thing. But there was more to it than that, something he was not quite ready to examine too closely. "You needed help," he said finally, "and I could give it. It is as simple as that." "I do not think you are a simple man, Ethan Xavier," Lily said, and there was warmth in her voice that made him smile. Back at the ranch, they fell into an easy routine. Ethan showed Lily around the property, introducing her to his 3 horses, his small herd of cattle that ranged across the scrubland, the vegetable garden he had started but was barely managing to maintain. "I am terrible at growing things," he admitted, gesturing to the struggling plants. "I can keep animals alive and build fences that hold, but put a seed in my hand and I might as well be cursing it." Lily laughed, the first genuine laugh he had heard from her. "My mother had a beautiful garden. She taught me quite a bit before she died. Maybe I could help if I am going to be staying here for a while." "I would not turn down the help," Ethan said. Over the following days, they settled into a rhythm that felt both strange and natural. Lily took over the cooking, which was a blessing because Ethan's skills in that area were as limited as his gardening abilities. She could make simple ingredients into meals that actually tasted like something worth eating. In return, Ethan taught her more about riding and introduced her to the daily work of the ranch. She proved to be a quick learner and willing to try anything. He showed her how to check the cattle for signs of illness or injury, how to repair sections of fence, how to read the land for signs of water and weather. She asked endless questions, and he found himself enjoying the role of teacher, watching her face light up with understanding. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and talk as the desert cooled around them. Lily told him about her childhood, about her father's schoolhouse and her mother's garden, about the life she had lost when fever took her parents. Ethan shared stories of his own family, the chaos and warmth of growing up with 8 siblings, the slow realization that he needed to forge his own path separate from theirs. "You miss them?" Lily asked one night when the stars were so bright overhead they seemed close enough to touch. "Sometimes," Ethan admitted, "but I write to my mother and she keeps me informed of everyone's doings. 2 of my brothers have married now, started families of their own. My sisters are all still at home, except for the oldest who married a farmer from the next county over. It is a good life for them, just not the life I wanted." "What did you want?" Lily asked, turning to look at him in the darkness. "This," he said, gesturing to the land around them. "Space to breathe, work that is my own, the chance to build something from nothing." "Have you ever wanted more than that? A wife, children, all the things that usually come with building a life?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with implications neither of them seemed ready to address directly. Ethan felt his heart beating harder in his chest. "I thought maybe someday," he said carefully. "When I had the ranch more established, when I felt like I had something to offer. But it is hard to meet people out here and harder still to find someone who wants this kind of life." "I think it is a good life," Lily said softly. "Hard, yes. But honest, there is something to be said for that." Another week passed, and then another. The sheriff sent word that he had found no trace of the other passengers and that the trail of the attackers had gone cold. The stage line had offered to arrange alternative transport for Lily to Prescott once she was ready to travel, but she did not seem in any hurry to make arrangements. Ethan knew he should encourage her to go, to continue on to the teaching position that had brought her west in the first place. But every time he thought about raising the subject, he found reasons to wait, just a few more days, just until she was stronger, just until he was sure she would be safe. The truth was, he had grown accustomed to her presence, more than accustomed to it. He looked forward to seeing her face in the morning, to sharing meals across his small table, to their evening conversations on the porch. The cabin that had once felt perfectly adequate now seemed empty whenever she rode into Jackson for supplies or to check at the sheriff's office for news. He was falling in love with her. He realized one night as he lay on his pallet in the main room, listening to her breathe in the next room. The knowledge hit him with the force of a physical blow, obvious and terrifying in equal measure. Lily Garrison had walked into his life asking for water, and he had given her access to his well, his home, his daily existence. And now he realized he wanted to give her so much more. He wanted to give her his whole world, such as it was. But she had plans, dreams of teaching in Prescott, a life already mapped out that did not include a struggling rancher in the middle of nowhere. The next morning, Ethan woke to find Lily already outside, working in the vegetable garden. He watched her from the porch, the way she moved between the rows with easy familiarity, checking each plant with gentle hands. In the weeks she had been there, the garden had transformed. The struggling vegetables had rallied under her care, and she had even planted new seeds that were already showing green shoots. "You are working magic out there," he called, and she looked up with a smile that made his chest ache. "Not magic. Just attention and water at the right times. Plants want to grow, you just have to give them what they need." He walked out to join her, standing at the edge of the garden. "Lily, we need to talk." Her smile faded, replaced by wariness. "That sounds serious. It has been almost 3 weeks since you arrived. I know you have plans, a position waiting for you in Prescott. I do not want to keep you from that." "You are not keeping me," she said, standing and brushing dirt from her hands. "I am choosing to stay." "Why?" The question came out more bluntly than he had intended. Lily looked down at the ground, then back up at him, and he saw vulnerability in her expression that he had not seen before. "Because I am happy here. Happier than I have been since my parents died. Maybe happier than I have ever been. I love the teaching, or I thought I did. But this life, this place, it fits me in a way I did not expect." "Lily," Ethan started, his voice rough. "Please let me finish," she interrupted, taking a step closer to him. "I know I should not say these things. You have been nothing but kind to me, and here I am imposing on you even more. But you asked why I stay, and I am trying to be honest. I stay because of you, Ethan. Because somewhere in these past weeks, you became the most important person in my world." His heart was hammering so hard he was sure she must be able to hear it. "You are the most important person in mine," he said, the words feeling both momentous and inevitable. "I have been trying not to say anything because I did not want to put pressure on you, did not want you to feel obligated because I helped you. But Lily, I love you. I did not mean to, did not plan for it, but there it is." Her eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I love you too. I think I started falling that first day when you gave me water and asked nothing in return, when you offered me your bed and your food and your protection without hesitation. Everything since then has only made me more certain." Ethan closed the distance between them and cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away the tears that had spilled onto her cheeks. "Are you sure? This is not an easy life. I do not have much to offer except hard work and uncertainty." "You have yourself," she said, placing her hands over his. "And this place, and a future we could build together. That is everything I want." He kissed her then, gentle at first and then with growing passion as she responded, her arms coming up to wrap around his neck. It felt like coming home, like finding something he had not even known he was searching for. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me, make this official, build this life with me for real." "Yes," Lily said without hesitation. "Yes, absolutely yes." They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Jackson, with Sheriff Bartlett standing up as witness and half the town in attendance. Martha Collins cried openly, declaring it the most romantic thing she had ever seen. And even Sarah Green got misty-eyed as Ethan and Lily exchanged simple gold bands that Ethan had purchased with money he could barely spare. Lily wore a new dress, pale blue cotton that Sarah had helped her make, and carried wildflowers that grew in the desert around the ranch. Ethan wore his best shirt and trousers, his hair slicked back with water, and tried not to shake as he said his vows. "I promise to love you and provide for you all the days of my life," he said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "To be your partner and your friend, to stand beside you in whatever comes." "I promise to love you and support you all the days of my life," Lily replied, her voice clear and sure. "To be your partner and your friend, to build a home and a future with you." When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan kissed her with the enthusiastic approval of their small audience, and for the first time in his adult life, he felt completely and perfectly content. The reception was held at Sarah's boarding house, with food donated by various townspeople who had taken Lily to their hearts in the brief time they had known her. There was music and dancing, and Ethan, who had never been much of a dancer, found himself spinning Lily around the floor with abandon, making her laugh with pure joy. "I did not know you could dance," she teased. "I cannot," he admitted. "But with you, I am willing to try anything." As the evening drew to a close and they prepared to ride back to their ranch, their home now, Sheriff Bartlett pulled Ethan aside. "You are a lucky man," he said seriously. "She is special, that one. You take care of her." "I will," Ethan promised, "with everything I have." The ride back to the ranch under the stars felt dreamlike. Lily rode beside him on the gentle mare that had become her horse, her blue dress ghostly in the moonlight. When they arrived home, Ethan lifted her down from the saddle and carried her across the threshold, making her shriek with surprised laughter. "We have crossed this threshold dozens of times already," she protested. "Not as my wife," Ethan said, setting her down gently in the middle of the room. "That makes all the difference." Their wedding night was tender and sweet, two people learning each other with patience and growing confidence. Ethan had worried about his inexperience, but Lily was patient and loving, and they found their way together with fumbling hands and whispered endearments. Afterward, lying together in the small bedroom that was now truly theirs, Ethan held Lily close and marveled at how completely his life had changed in just 2 months. "What are you thinking?" Lily asked, trailing her fingers across his chest. "That I am the luckiest man alive. That you walked out of the desert asking for water, and instead gave me everything I did not know I needed." "I think we saved each other," Lily said, tilting her head up to kiss his jaw. "You gave me a home when I was lost in more ways than one. You gave me purpose and love and a future. I was so focused on getting to Prescott, on becoming a teacher, because I thought that was the only way to matter, to have value. But here, with you, I have found something better." "You could still teach," Ethan said, the thought occurring to him suddenly. "Jackson needs a school. The children there have nothing, and their parents have been talking about pooling resources to start something. You could be exactly what they need." Lily sat up, her eyes bright with excitement. "Do you really think so?" "I know so. We could talk to the town council, put together a proposal. It would not pay much, probably nothing at first, but if it is something you want to do—" "I want to do it," Lily said decisively. "Oh, Ethan, that would be perfect. I could have both, the life here with you and the teaching I love. How did I get so lucky?" "We are both lucky," he said, pulling her back down into his arms. "We found each other against impossible odds. That has to count for something." The months that followed were busy and full. Lily did indeed speak to the town council about starting a school, and her proposal was met with enthusiasm. By late autumn, she was teaching a dozen children in a room at the back of the church, using books donated from various sources and slates purchased through community fundraising. Ethan watched her blossom in her new role, coming alive with purpose as she guided her students through lessons in reading and arithmetic and history. She talked about them constantly at home, proud of every small achievement, worried over those who struggled. The ranch prospered too. With Lily's help, they expanded the vegetable garden and started selling produce in Jackson. Her organizational skills proved invaluable as they planned for the future, mapping out improvements and calculating costs. She kept meticulous records of their expenses and income, helping Ethan see patterns he had missed on his own. They worked side by side, partners in every sense of the word. Ethan would come in from checking the cattle to find Lily preparing lessons at the table, and she would look up with a smile that still made his heart skip. Or he would be repairing fence and turn to find her bringing him water and food, staying to help with the work despite his protests that it was too hard for her. "I am not fragile," she would say, exasperated. "I am a rancher's wife. Let me act like one." Their first winter together was harsh, with cold winds and snow that was unusual for the Arizona territory. They spent long evenings huddled close to the fire, reading aloud to each other from the books Lily had accumulated or simply talking about their dreams for the future. "I want to build you a proper house," Ethan said one night, staring into the flames. "Something bigger than this cabin with a real parlor and a kitchen that is not also the sitting room. You deserve better than this." "I have everything I need," Lily assured him, snuggling closer against his side. "But I would not say no to a bigger house someday, especially if we have children." The casual mention of children sent a thrill through Ethan. They had not talked much about that possibility, though it was always there, unspoken in the background of their lives together. "You want children?" he asked. "Very much," Lily said. "Do you?" "Yes, a whole houseful if we are blessed," she laughed. "Maybe we can start with one or two and see how we manage." Spring came, and with it new life. The cattle calved successfully, adding to their herd. Lily's garden exploded with growth, providing more vegetables than they could eat themselves. And Lily herself began to suspect she might be carrying their first child. She told Ethan one evening in early May, her hands trembling slightly as she took his and placed them on her still flat stomach. "I think we are going to have a baby," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am not completely certain yet, but all the signs are there." Ethan felt his eyes prickle with tears, overwhelmed by the enormity of it. "A baby, our baby." "Are you happy?" Lily asked, searching his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," he said, pulling her into his arms. "You have given me everything, Lily. A home, a purpose, and now this. I do not have words for what I feel." She held him tight, and he felt her own tears dampening his shirt. "I am scared," she admitted. "What if something goes wrong? What if I am not a good mother?" "You are going to be an amazing mother," Ethan said with absolute certainty. "You are patient and kind and so full of love. Our child is blessed to have you." "Our child," Lily repeated, wonder in her voice. That sounds so strange and so right at the same time. The pregnancy progressed well. Lily continued teaching through the summer, though she began to tire more easily and had to take breaks during the day. The women in Jackson rallied around her, offering advice and support and hand-me-down baby clothes that were gratefully accepted. Sarah Green appointed herself as unofficial grandmother, knitting tiny garments and fussing over Lily's health. Martha Collins organized a sort of baby shower, a newer tradition from back east that was catching on, where the women of the town gathered to present Lily with gifts for the coming baby. Ethan watched all of this with a mixture of pride and fear. He was terrified something would go wrong, that he would lose Lily the way he had seen so many men lose their wives in childbirth. He became overprotective, trying to stop her from doing anything remotely strenuous, until Lily finally had to sit him down and have a firm talk. "I am pregnant, not dying," she said, taking his hands in hers. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time. I need you to trust that I know my own body and my own limits. If I need help, I will ask for it. But you have to let me live my life, Ethan. I cannot spend the next few months wrapped in cotton wool." "I am sorry," he said, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "I am just so afraid of losing you. I know. But fear is not going to keep me safe. Love and trust and taking reasonable precautions, those things will help. But I need to feel like your partner, not your patient." He nodded, understanding but still struggling with his instinct to shield her from everything. It was a balance he would have to learn, he realized, letting her be strong while still being there to support her. As autumn arrived again and Lily's belly grew round with their child, Ethan found himself talking to the baby through her skin, placing his hands on her stomach to feel the kicks and movements that amazed him every time. "Hello in there," he would murmur. "This is your father. I am looking forward to meeting you. Your mother and I have been getting everything ready for you. We have a cradle and blankets and so much love waiting for you." Lily would laugh at his one-sided conversations but never stopped him. She loved watching him connect with their unborn child, loved the wonder on his face when the baby kicked against his palm. In early December, just as the weather was turning cold again, Lily went into labor. It was the longest night of Ethan's life. Sarah Green had come to stay at the ranch for the final weeks of the pregnancy, prepared to serve as midwife, and she efficiently took charge when the contractions began. Ethan was banished to the main room while Sarah and Martha, who had ridden out at Sarah's request, tended to Lily in the bedroom. He paced the floor, prayed to a God he had not paid much attention to in years, and tried not to panic every time he heard Lily cry out. It seemed to take forever. Hours stretched into an eternity of worry and helplessness. Then, just as dawn was breaking, he heard it. The thin, angry wail of a newborn baby. The bedroom door opened and Sarah appeared, smiling broadly. "You have a son, Ethan. A healthy boy with a good, strong pair of lungs." Ethan pushed past her into the room, his eyes going immediately to Lily. She was propped up against pillows, sweaty and exhausted but smiling, holding a small bundle wrapped in one of Sarah's hand-knit blankets. "Come meet your son," she said, her voice tired but filled with joy. Ethan approached on shaky legs and looked down at the tiny red face peering out from the blanket. His son. His and Lily's. The baby's eyes were squeezed shut, his mouth working as he made small sounds of displeasure at being thrust into the cold, bright world. "He is perfect," Ethan whispered, reaching out to touch one impossibly small hand. Immediately, the baby's fingers curled around his, gripping with surprising strength. "Look at that. He knows his father." "Would you like to hold him?" Lily asked, and Ethan nodded, too overcome to speak. She showed him how to support the baby's head, how to cradle the small body against his chest. Ethan held his son with infinite care, staring down at the miracle in his arms. "We should name him," Lily said. "We talked about names but never decided." "I like James," Ethan said, "after my father." "James Garrison Xavier." Lily smiled. "Including my maiden name, I like that. James Garrison Xavier it is. Welcome to the world, little James." The baby, as if recognizing his name, opened his eyes briefly, revealing dark blue infant eyes that would probably change color in time. Then he yawned, a tiny perfect yawn, and settled against Ethan's chest as though he belonged there. Sarah and Martha eventually shooed Ethan out so Lily could rest, but he could barely contain himself. His son. He had a son. He kept going to the bedroom door to peek in, to reassure himself that it was all real, until Sarah threatened to lock him out entirely. The days that followed were a blur of exhaustion and wonder. James proved to be a good baby, relatively calm except when hungry, which was often. Lily took to motherhood with the same natural grace she brought to everything else, though Ethan could see the toll the lack of sleep was taking on her. He did everything he could to help, changing diapers and walking James around the cabin in the middle of the night while Lily rested. He sang to his son, teaching him folk songs his own mother had sung, talking to him about the ranch and the life they would share. "You are going to love it here," he told James one night, pacing the floor while Lily slept in the next room. "Wide open spaces and horses and cattle. Your mother has a garden that is like magic, and she is going to teach you to read and write. You are going to have such a good life, son. Better than I had, better than I could have ever imagined for myself." Christmas that year was special in a way Ethan had never experienced. It was James's first Christmas, even though he was too young to understand it. Lily decorated the cabin with pine branches and berries, and they exchanged small homemade gifts with each other. "I have something for you," Lily said on Christmas morning, handing Ethan a package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a new shirt she had sewn herself, fine work with careful stitches. "I know your old work shirts are getting threadbare," she said. "I wanted you to have something nice." "It is perfect," Ethan said, touched by the care she had put into it. "I have something for you too." His gift was a delicate silver locket he had ordered from a catalog, using money from the sale of cattle he had kept secret. Inside, he had placed a tiny photograph of the three of them that a traveling photographer had taken when they had gone into Jackson the week before. Lily cried when she opened it, her fingers trembling as she touched the locket. "Ethan, this must have cost so much." "You are worth it," he said simply. "You and James are worth everything." She threw her arms around him, and James, lying on a blanket on the floor, made a gurgling sound that they chose to interpret as approval. The years began to pass, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the milestones of their growing family. James learned to walk and talk, becoming a curious, energetic toddler who followed Ethan around the ranch like a shadow. Lily went back to teaching when James was old enough, taking him with her to the schoolhouse where he played quietly while she taught the other children. When James was 3, Lily became pregnant again. This time there was less fear and more excitement, though Ethan still worried his way through the entire pregnancy. Their second child was another boy, whom they named Daniel after Lily's father. He was different from James from the start, quieter and more thoughtful, content to sit and observe while his older brother raced around causing cheerful chaos. True to his word, Ethan began building a new house when Daniel was a year old. It took 2 years of work, doing what he could in spare moments and with the help of neighbors who came for barn raisings that were actually house raisings. The new house was modest but solid, with 2 bedrooms upstairs, a proper parlor, and a kitchen that was its own room with a real cook stove. The day they moved from the cabin to the new house, Lily stood in the middle of the parlor and cried. "What is wrong?" Ethan asked, concerned. "Nothing is wrong," she assured him, wiping her eyes. "I am just remembering that first day I came to the cabin asking for water. I was lost and scared and had no idea what would become of my life. And now look at us. A beautiful home, 2 healthy sons, a life that is fuller than I ever dreamed possible. How did we get so lucky? We found each other," Ethan said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "That is the beginning and end of all our luck." They stood together in their new home, watching through the window as James and Daniel played in the yard, and Ethan felt a contentment so deep, it was almost painful. This was everything he had wanted when he came west, everything he had worked for, and so much more than he had ever imagined he might have. When the boys were older, Lily taught them at home during the years when she was not actively running the school in Jackson. They learned their letters and numbers at her knee, and Ethan taught them ranch work, how to ride and rope and care for animals. Both boys took to the life naturally, though Daniel showed more interest in books while James was always eager to be outside working with the cattle. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Ethan expanded the herd and improved the breed by trading for better stock. He built new fences and corrals, dug a second well, and planted windbreaks of trees that Lily had insisted they needed. The vegetable garden became an orchard as well, with fruit trees that would take years to mature but promised future abundance. They faced hardships too. A drought year when they lost half the herd and had to sell off cattle at unfavorable prices. A winter so harsh that they barely made it through, huddled together for warmth and rationing food. Illnesses that swept through, leaving them all weakened but, thankfully, alive through it all. Ethan and Lily remained partners in the truest sense. They made decisions together, supported each other through difficulties, celebrated successes as shared victories. Their love deepened with time, growing from the passionate bloom of new romance into something richer and more substantial. "I love you more now than I did on our wedding day," Ethan told Lily one night, many years into their marriage. They were sitting on the porch of the big house, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of orange and purple. "How is that possible?" Lily asked, leaning against his shoulder. "We were so in love then." "That was the beginning," Ethan said. "This is the depth. Knowing all your flaws and quirks, seeing you at your worst and your best, raising children together and building a life. That is a love that has been tested and proven. It is stronger for all we have been through." "You are quite the poet tonight," Lily teased, but he could hear the emotion in her voice. "But I agree. What we have now is worth more than all the gold in California." When James was 10 and Daniel was 7, Lily became pregnant once more. This pregnancy was harder than the previous two, and she had to give up teaching earlier than she wanted. But when their third son was born, healthy and squalling, they named him Thomas and welcomed him with the same joy they had felt with the other two. Thomas was different from his brothers, more mischievous and prone to getting into trouble. He kept Lily on her toes in a way the older boys never had, but he was also affectionate and charming, able to talk his way out of consequences with a smile and a hug. "This one is going to be a handful," Lily said, watching 3-year-old Thomas attempt to climb onto a horse that was far too large for him while James and Daniel shouted warnings. "All our boys are a handful," Ethan said, striding out to pluck Thomas from danger before he could fall. "But I would not have it any other way." The years continued to roll forward. James grew into a strong young man, taking on more responsibility for the ranch as Ethan's hair began to gray at the temples. He was courting a girl from Jackson, a sweet-natured young woman named Mary who won Lily's approval immediately. Daniel showed aptitude for learning that surpassed even Lily's expectations. She taught him everything she could, and when he was 15, they made the difficult decision to send him to school in Tucson, where he could get an education beyond what was available in Jackson. "I will miss you terribly," Lily told Daniel the day he left, holding him tight. "But I am so proud of you. Your grandfather would have been proud too." "I will make you proud, Mother," Daniel promised, "and I will come home for visits whenever I can." Thomas was still young, only 8 when Daniel left, and he took his brother's departure hard. But he threw himself into ranch work with renewed dedication, determined to prove himself to his father and older brothers. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Ethan surprised Lily with a trip to Prescott, the town she had originally been traveling to when the stage was attacked all those years ago. They left the boys in the capable hands of Sarah Green, who was now in her 70s, but still spry and sharp as ever. "Go," Sarah had insisted. "You two deserve some time to yourselves. The boys and I will manage just fine." Prescott was larger than Jackson, more developed and cosmopolitan. Ethan and Lily stayed at a nice hotel, ate in restaurants, and walked the streets arm in arm like young lovers. On their last evening there, Ethan took Lily to a small park overlooking the town. "You ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had made it here that first time?" he asked. "If the stage had not been attacked and you had become a teacher here as planned?" Lily considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I wonder, but I cannot regret what happened because it brought me to you. This life, our life together, it is better than anything I could have imagined for myself. I was so focused on a plan, on what I thought I should do. But the best things in my life came from being open to possibilities I had not considered." "I think about that day all the time," Ethan said. "You appearing on the horizon, asking for water. It seemed like such a simple request, but really you were asking for everything. Shelter, safety, a new beginning. And I gave you the well, but somehow in doing that, I gave you my whole world." "And I gave you mine," Lily said, kissing him softly. "We gave each other everything that matters." They returned home to find the ranch running smoothly under James's capable management, and Thomas entertaining Sarah with increasingly exaggerated stories about his adventures. Life settled back into its comfortable rhythms, marked by work and love and the changing seasons. More years passed. James married his Mary, and they built a house on the far end of the ranch property, starting their own family while still being part of the larger whole. Their first child was a daughter, whom they named Lily, and Ethan discovered the unique joy of being a grandfather. Daniel finished his education and surprised them by returning to Jackson to start a school that was larger and more formal than the one Lily had run. He had dreams of bringing proper education to the Arizona territory, and he pursued them with the same quiet determination that had characterized his childhood. Thomas, who had always been the wildest of the three boys, shocked everyone by falling in love with a preacher's daughter from Tucson and settling down to become a responsible, hard-working rancher. He took over more and more of the daily operations as Ethan and Lily grew older, allowing them to step back and enjoy their later years. On a warm spring evening in 1908, 30 years after Lily had first walked across Ethan's land asking for water, they sat together on the porch of the house they had built. They were in their early 50s now, their hair more gray than not, their hands weathered with decades of work. But they sat close together as always, comfortable in the silence of long companionship. "You ever regret it?" Ethan asked, breaking the quiet. "Staying here with me instead of pursuing the life you had planned?" Lily turned to look at him, and her green eyes were as bright as they had been the day he first saw her. "Never. Not even once. You gave me everything I asked for and so much I did not know to ask for. Water from your well, yes, but also love and partnership and a family and a home. You gave me your whole world, Ethan Xavier, and I have spent 30 years trying to give you mine in return." "You have given me more than I ever dreamed possible," Ethan said, taking her hand and bringing it to his lips. "I was content before you came, or so I thought. But you taught me the difference between being content and being truly happy. You taught me what it means to build a life with someone, to be part of something larger than yourself." They watched the sunset paint familiar colors across the sky, watched their grandchildren play in the yard while James and Mary called them in for supper, watched the land they had worked for decades settling into evening peace. "We did good," Lily said softly. "We did very good," Ethan agreed. The years continued forward, bringing changes both welcome and difficult. Ethan and Lily grew older, their steps slower but their love undiminished. They watched their sons raise families of their own, saw their grandchildren grow and begin to make their own marks on the world. The ranch that had started as one man's struggling claim had become a true family enterprise, spanning generations and encompassing not just the land but the values and love that Ethan and Lily had built their life around. Hard work, yes, but also compassion. Independence, but also community. Strength, but also gentleness. On their 40th anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There were children everywhere, grandchildren, and now even a few great-grandchildren, the youngest of whom was just learning to walk. Sarah Green had passed several years earlier, but many of the friends they had made in Jackson over the decades came to celebrate with them. Martha Collins, now in her 80s and still running the general store with the help of her daughters, made a speech that had everyone laughing and crying in turns. 40 years ago, a lost girl walked out of the desert and into Ethan Xavier's life, and he was smart enough to recognize the blessing when it appeared. They have built something remarkable here, not just a successful ranch, but a legacy of love and family that inspires us all. Standing before their assembled loved ones, Ethan and Lily renewed their vows, speaking words they had written themselves that captured 4 decades of shared life. "You are still the woman who asked me for water," Ethan said, his voice strong despite his age. "And I am still the man who gave you the well and everything else I had. I would do it again in a heartbeat, make the same choice every single day. You are still the man who saw someone in need and helped without question," Lily said, tears streaming down her face. "The man who has been my partner in all things, who has loved me through good times and hard times with equal devotion. My heart has been yours for 40 years, and it will be yours until my last breath." As they kissed, their family erupted in applause and cheers, and Ethan felt his own eyes sting with happy tears. This was what mattered, not the land or the cattle or the material things they had accumulated. These people, this love that had grown and multiplied beyond anything he could have imagined. That night, after all the guests had left and the house had settled into quiet, Ethan and Lily lay in their bed holding hands in the darkness. "I am so tired," Lily confessed with a soft laugh. "But it was a wonderful day." "It was perfect," Ethan agreed. "All of our children and grandchildren together celebrating what we built. What we are still building," Lily corrected. "This is not the end, Ethan. We have more years ahead of us." "I plan to spend every single one of them loving you," he said. "That sounds like an excellent plan." They drifted off to sleep together, hands still linked, hearts still as intertwined as they had been that first night when Lily had slept in his bedroom and he had made a pallet on the floor. Both of them too new to their feelings to act on them, but already beginning the journey that would define their lives. The final years passed gently. Ethan and Lily grew old together with grace, their love a constant that their children and grandchildren came to rely on as a model for their own relationships. They took joy in small things: morning coffee shared on the porch, evening walks around the property they knew by heart, visits from their ever-expanding family. When Ethan passed away in his sleep at the age of 73, with Lily beside him as she had been for 45 years, the whole of Jackson turned out for his funeral. He was remembered as a good man, a fair man, someone who had helped build the community through quiet action rather than loud words. Lily lived another 5 years, spending them surrounded by family in the house Ethan had built for her. She continued to teach occasionally, working with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren on their letters and numbers, passing down the love of learning her own father had instilled in her. On a warm spring evening very like the one when she had first appeared on the horizon, Lily passed away peacefully in her sleep, a small smile on her face. Her family, gathered around her in the days before, had listened to her tell and retell the story of how she had met Ethan, asking for water and receiving so much more. "He gave me the well," she had said, her voice weak but content, "and his whole world, and I gave him mine." That is what love is, really. The giving of your whole self, the sharing of everything you are and everything you hope to be. We were so lucky, your grandfather and I, so very, very lucky. She was buried beside Ethan on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky so blue it seemed to go on forever. The ranch continued under James's stewardship, then his sons, generation after generation maintaining the legacy of the lonely cowboy who had given water to a desperate woman and, in that simple act of kindness, had found his whole world. The well that Ethan had drawn water from that first day still stood, though it was no longer the ranch's primary water source. It had been carefully maintained over the decades, preserved as a symbol of where it all began. Ethan and Lily's descendants would bring their children there and tell them the story of how their great-great-grandfather had offered water and kindness to a stranger, and how that stranger had become the woman who shaped their family's destiny. In the end, it was a story about more than just two people falling in love. It was about recognizing opportunities when they appeared, about having the courage to change your plans when something better came along, about building a life based on mutual respect and shared dreams. It was about how the smallest acts of kindness can ripple forward through time, creating waves of love and family that stretch far beyond what anyone could have imagined. Ethan had been a lonely cowboy working a difficult claim in the Arizona Territory, focused on survival and success measured in acres and cattle. Lily had been a lost woman with plans derailed and a future uncertain. Together, they had created something that transcended both their individual dreams, a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. And it all began with a simple request: "Water, please." And the generous answer: "Take the well, take my home, take my whole world. It is yours." That was the gift they had given each other, the complete and total offering of everything they were. And in return, they had received something priceless: a love that would echo through generations, a partnership that would become legend in their family, a life that, though it had its share of hardships, was full and rich and deeply, profoundly good. Their great-great-grandchildren still lived on that land in the Arizona Territory, still worked cattle and grew vegetables and built lives filled with hard work and love. And on spring evenings, when the sun painted the desert in impossible colors, they would sometimes stand by that old well and think about the woman who had asked for water and the man who had given her everything. And they would understand that they were part of something larger than themselves, something that had begun with an act of simple human kindness and grown into a legacy of love. The ranch that Ethan Xavier had claimed in 1875 was still in the family well into the next century, still bearing the marks of his work and Lily's vision. The house they had built together, expanded and modernized over the years, but still fundamentally the same structure, remained the heart of the family home. And every generation that came after them learned the story of how it all began, how love could bloom in the most unlikely circumstances, how two people could find each other against impossible odds and build something that would outlast them both. It was a story worth telling and retelling, a reminder that sometimes the greatest adventures begin not with grand plans but with simple needs and generous hearts willing to meet them. Water, shelter, kindness, love. The fundamental human needs that, when freely given and gratefully received, could form the foundation of something extraordinary. And so the legacy continued, generation after generation, built on the foundation that Ethan and Lily had laid with their love and their commitment to each other, and to the life they had chosen to build together. It was not always easy, but it was always worth it. That was the lesson they had learned and passed down, that true partnership, real love, could weather any storm and create something beautiful out of even the harshest circumstances. The lonely cowboy had given the desperate woman his well and his whole world, and she had given him hers in return. And from that exchange, from that moment of connection and choice, had sprung everything that came after. All the love, all the family, all the joy and struggle and triumph that made up a life well lived. That was their gift to the future, their legacy to the generations that would follow. Not just the land or the ranch or the material success they had achieved, but the example of what two people could build when they chose to face life together, to support each other, to love each other without reservation or condition. And every time someone drew water from that old well, though it was now more symbol than utility, they remembered. They remembered how it all began, with a woman asking for water, and a man giving her the well and his whole world. They remembered, and they were grateful for the legacy of love that had shaped their lives and would continue to shape the lives of all who came after them.